You have been a professor of entrepreneurship strategy. You started your own venture, which was a professional, for-profit venture. If you have to take up any social initiative, what would that be?
It would be in education, definitely.
Okay.
And it would in some way involve helping underprivileged sections of the population get a good education.
Okay.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to get all the latest updates.
Hi everyone, I am Anita Sharma and I'm feeling extremely fortunate today because I'm going to be speaking with Professor Velamuri, whose paper I have been reading from my PhD days on entrepreneurial opportunities. And I built my arguments around his work, and I'm so fortunate. This is a fan moment for me. And please join me in welcoming Professor Velamuri. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our request. And I'm glad that you accepted and you are here today to Inkpothub Media, and I'm so happy to have you.
It is my pleasure.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, you are a seasoned academician with over 3.5 decades of experience in holding different key academic, administrative, and industry positions. You have worked with globally ranked institutes like the China Europe International Business Schools, Shanghai, China IESE Business School, Barcelona, Spain. With this enriched experience, I was looking for your profile on LinkedIn and other various media platforms, and your journey from your graduation, which you did from University of Madras, then you went to Barcelona, Spain for your masters, and then Darden Business School for your PhD. When you look back and reflect, how do you feel today?
I feel that it's been a rich journey, but perhaps not very planned. And if you'll allow me to explain.
Yes, sir, please.
So during my bachelor's degree in Chennai, I started learning German at the Goethe Institute, Max Müller Bhavan in Chennai. And I learned that I was quite good at learning a new language, at least German. And I was doing quite well in my German studies. And somehow I had this very strong urge that I wanted to go out and see the world. And so I was determined to apply to international universities for my master's. In those days, that was the only kind of path that you could take to go out. The IT industry pretty much did not exist. I'm talking about 1983. And so if you wanted to go abroad for somebody with a degree in commerce, your only option was pretty much to go for higher studies. And so I applied to a few universities because in those days, the application fee was also quite expensive. So $25 for an Indian family was not a small amount of money. And so I was very selective in applying to a very small number of universities in the US. I wrote my GMAT, of course. And it so happened that the universities that I applied to required 16 years of schooling before they would accept anybody for a master's program.
Okay.
There were a couple of universities that my classmates applied to that were not so rigid. Okay. But my luck was that the few universities that I applied to responded by saying that we need one more year from you of study before we can, you have 15, but we need 16 years. And so I was just thinking about what to do. Unknown to me, my GMAT scores were sent to IESE in Barcelona. And IESE had simply subscribed to a database of students who had written the exam. And so they wrote to me and said, we've just launched an MBA program with the assistance of Harvard Business School. Okay. And would you be interested in, and it's a bilingual program. So you by the time you finish, you will have an MBA degree, but you'll also be proficient in Spanish.
Okay.
Would you be interested in attending? Of course, I had no idea of any educational institution in Spain. I had not thought about it. So this letter came out of the blue. And in fact, I was asking the postman if he had made a mistake, but fortunately it had my name on it. So I knew it was not a mistake. And so the Harvard connection gave me some reassurance that this was a quality institution.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still a big risk for somebody from India in the early 80s to go to Spain, which was not really known in India that much as an educational destination. So I took the leap and I went there in 1983. In my senior batch, that is in the second year of the MBA program, there was one other Indian, Anil Taneja, who had graduated from IIT Kanpur, and he had worked for a couple of years and then he had gone to Spain. And we found that it was a very, very rigorous program. We had Professor Harry Hansen, who taught us marketing. So Professor Harry Hansen was in the Harvard team that set up business schools in India. So he was in the team that helped Vikram Sarabhai and others set up IIM Ahmedabad. He had helped set up the Asian Institute of Management in the Philippines, and I believe also IMEDE in Switzerland.
Okay.
And and ESA also had many other professors who got their PhDs from the US. Okay, so it was a great educational experience. And the second year we had to take classes in Spanish.
Okay.
And so during the first year we underwent Spanish language training. And when I graduated, I got a job with a Spanish listed company in Madrid that had a significant business in India. And the reason they hired me was, to help them manage the Indian business. Okay.
Indian connection helped you. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this was a battery manufacturer, lead acid battery manufacturer. They made batteries for automobiles and forklift trucks and so on. But soon after I joined the Spanish company, I was, I think, the fourth or fifth MBA that they had hired. All their managerial ranks were filled with either engineers or they had very few lawyers. Okay, but none of the top management had any management qualifications. Okay, and so there were 4 or 5 young MBAs that they had just started hiring, and they were very puzzled by us, because we was. If you think about it, we were totally overconfident, and we were willing to work on any project, work in manufacturing, in finance, in marketing, just that eagerness and that aggression, I suppose, that an MBA teaches you. And of course, with the case method, you think that you can dissect and analyze any business problem. So they were actually somewhat amused by our willingness to, take on projects in any area. And so soon after I joined this company, it's called the Tudor Group, TUDOR, the Tudor Group. Spain entered what was then called the European Economic Community. And suddenly the European market became very important for the Tudor Group.
Mm-hmm.
And so my boss, who was a very, very successful manager, who's now one of the most successful managers in Spain, he decided that he didn't want me to work on the Indian project because it was not big enough for them. And he told me that, Rama, we need you here in Europe. And they had a problem in the UK. And so he sent me there to sort out the problem. Initially it was a finance and accounting problem. And my Spanish colleagues were having some difficulty understanding the British system of financial reporting, which is of course very familiar to me, okay, having studied the BCom and all that. And so I was able to sort out those issues quite easily. And then unexpectedly, the managing director of the British subsidiary, which was based in Bristol in the UK, she stepped down from her position and she took up a non-executive role. And my boss was then looking for a replacement for her. And at that stage, I was only 24 years old. I raised my hand and I said, boss, I think I can do this job.
Okay.
It was a small subsidiary, but I said, I think I can deal with this. Give me an opportunity. So he was totally taken aback. And he said, let me think about it. And initially he said, I'll make you assistant general manager. But then finally, I don't know what happened. He appointed me general manager at the age of 24.
Okay.
So I had a team of about 16 employees, which grew to about 22 or 23 over the course of the next 3 years. And I had a really successful stint there. I would say that, in addition to growing the business with the help of some excellent team members that we recruited in the UK, I learned an enormous amount from people who were supposedly reporting to me, but actually I was like a sponge absorbing all their wisdom, And then the group headquarters in Madrid, we made a significant acquisition in Germany. And I was asked to be in the post-acquisition integration team. I was not, none of the managers at my level were privy to the negotiations and the decision to acquire. But once the acquisition was made, we were, a couple of us were sent to Germany to help with there was another senior manager who was leading the team. And so we were working with him to ensure that the integration was smooth. And that allowed me to, gave me the opportunity of working in Germany for about a year. And then I was promoted to a position in the headquarters, put in charge of 4 small European subsidiaries, which I did for about 18 months. And then when I took this position as the head of what they call the European Markets Division, I was only about 27 years old.
Okay.
And I had about a revenue budget of about $45 million. This was 1990, okay? And I had a workforce, I was managing a workforce of 170 employees with 5 or 6 direct reports. And this also got me a position in the management committee of the group. So this was a group that had revenues of about $700 million US. It was the second largest battery company in Europe. And by virtue of being in this position, I was also a member of the management committee. So this is where things started getting really tough.
Okay.
And I realized that, I didn't have the political skills to navigate a position like that, And to cut the long story short, I mean, the group tried to move me laterally to another position. They could see that I was having some difficulties, which in hindsight, I think was the right thing for them to do. But I was adamant that I wanted to continue in that position. And when they refused to entertain my request, I resigned. Okay.
Okay.
So this was just after, you're probably too young to remember, Anita. This was just after the Iraq's invasion of Kuwait.
Kuwait, 1991.
1990, I think 1990, and then the 1991 was the war, the Iraq war, right? And the global economy went into a recession.
Yes.
And so that my decision to resign turned out to be a blunder, okay? Because during my nearly 6-year stint in the Tudor Group, I had been approached by many executive search companies asking me if I wanted to work in their clients' organizations, right? And that led me to believe that there would be no dearth of offers if I resigned and started looking for a new position. But two things had changed, right? One was that there was now a recession, a global recession. And the second thing that changed was that I was out of a job. And I learned the hard way that the labor market views somebody who's out of a job very differently from somebody who is in a job.
Mm.
At the back of the recruiter's mind is always the question, why did he leave, right? And so it took me several months to find a new position. In fact, I had two offers. One was from Gamesa, which is one of the largest windmill manufacturers today. And the other was from the world's largest producer of lollipops, a company called Chupa Chups. They were also in India.
Yeah.
They had a joint venture with Dabur. Yeah. And
I remember eating those lollipops. Yeah. I was a kid then.
Yes. So they were produced in Himachal Pradesh. And it was a joint venture with Dabur, the Dabur group.
True.
So I decided very, as soon as I interviewed with them, that I didn't see myself selling lollipops. So I turned down that offer. But I did give serious thought to the offer from Gamesa. But finally decided not to take it because it was in the northern part of Spain, in a place called Vitoria, in the Basque country. And I decided to set up my own company in partnership with another graduate of ESA who was 1 year my senior. And I did that for 8 years. Okay, ran my own company in Madrid. And during this time, we were a consulting company, okay, helping our clients in the process of internationalization. So we worked with some good companies. Exide Industries in India was one of them. Mm-hmm. I worked on the entry strategy in Europe for the industrial battery business, and worked with many family businesses. Did a project with Hindustan Lever in India in their frozen seafood business. But the problem of being self-employed, being a self-employed consultant, was that business was very irregular. So you were hunting for business, and when you got a contract, you were the only person who was in charge of executing the contract. And so the income was very unpredictable. It kept going up and down, okay? Whereas my bills were, very stable on a monthly basis. And so I decided to bring some regularity in my income. I decided to teach. And some of my professors at ESA told me that, if you're doing consulting, then teaching is a very good activity to have on the side, because it forces you to keep engaged with the latest literature. And so Boston University had opened a campus in Spain, halfway between Madrid and Barcelona, in a city called Zaragoza. Mm. And I wrote to the director of the Boston University School of Management in Spain, offering my services as a visiting faculty member. And he called me for an interview, and he gave me visiting assignments regularly. And so that's how I got a foothold into teaching. Mm. Over the next 2 or 3 years, I realized that I enjoyed teaching a lot more than consulting.
Okay.
And I wanted to do more teaching. I did some assignments at the University of Saarland in Germany. And then a French school had opened a campus in India, ENPC, Grande École, They had opened a campus in Kochi. I taught one course there. But not having a PhD was a drawback, because all the education institutions, business schools at that time, were looking to hire faculty members with PhDs, because they were under pressure from the accreditation agencies. Okay. And so jokingly, my mentor and professor at ESA, he said, a PhD is like a trade union certificate of the academics. If you don't have that certificate, it becomes very difficult to join the ranks of academics on a full-time basis. So then I toyed with the idea of doing a part-time PhD. I looked at there were some programs in Europe that were offering part-time PhDs in the UK particularly. But again, my mentor at TSA, he said, Professor Paddy Miller, who passed away a few years ago, Professor Paddy Miller said to me, look, you have a long career ahead of you. I think you should invest in a full-time PhD. And so I then took his advice, applied to some good programs, and got into the University of Virginia with a scholarship. And this was fairly late, right? When I started my PhD, I was 37 years old. Because I had already been working, in industry and as a consultant. I had a small child. And so it was not an easy decision. And to give up the income stream that I had built over 8 years in consulting and part-time teaching was also not an easy decision, okay? But we decided to take the plunge, in consultation with my wife. My wife is also, very adventurous. So she said, let's do it, let's go to the US and I'll back you. And the day before we left for the US, we learned that my wife was pregnant with our second child. And so that's how our American journey began.
Okay. So I think as a typical career transition from like an aggressive MBA grad to corporate to top leadership to giving back to academia and then consulting. So it's a typical journey which I get a lot of queries around similar type of profiles. So I will now share your journey. Like, okay, look, Professor Velamuri's life trajectory and how he had managed all those things step by step. You can also go and enter in that space. Tell me more about your PhD journey, because you have worked. It was in Darden Business School. It's a sought after place for an MBA or a master, management research. So tell me more about it, how it happened, and after that, what exactly you did.
So the PhD program at Darden is very unusual in that, first of all, it's very small. Okay, so they only take maybe 4 or 5 students every 2 years. They don't admit students every year. Okay, that's because not all the Darden faculty are active in the supervision of doctoral students. So that was and the second thing is that it tended to attract people with my kind of a profile. In other words, people who are making a mid-career transition to academia. So, for example, one of my classmates had been a managing director at Chase Manhattan Bank for many years. And then, or was it Bank of America? I'm not sure. And she also joined the PhD program. She was about also in her late 30s. Then there were a couple of my classmates had come from consulting. Also after more than 10 years of experience in consulting. So my classmates were also similar to me in profile in that they had all decided to shift careers towards academia after an initial stint either in industry or banking or consulting. And the advantage of the Darden PhD program is that it's a very rich school. So although it's a public university, the Darden School is very well endowed, with funds from donors and so on. So in addition to a full scholarship, we got generous budgets to travel to conferences, travel to meet co-authors. For example, you may have heard, Anita, of a very well-known entrepreneurship scholar by name Saraswati.
So I have a moment with her. I attended the AOM conference in 2016 and 17, and both the conferences I happened to see her, and I was stand still, and I was not, it was like a God figure right in front of me, and just wanted to interact with her, but I could not. I was just, and then she just passed me, and then
Okay.
that moment happened with me. So tell
Yes.
me about that incident.
Yeah. So she, as you know, by the way, she spends several months a year under normal circumstances. I'm not talking during the pandemic. Several months a year at IIM Bangalore. So anytime you want to meet her, I can arrange that meeting.
Thank you.
So what did not happen at the AOM conference? Let's see if we can remedy that. But she had just finished her Ph.D. from Carnegie Mellon, and she had worked under, Herbert Simon, the giant Nobel laureate and Turing Award winner and so on. And she and my advisor, Professor S. Venkatraman, they were very intensively exchanging ideas and brainstorming and discussing new topics and so on. And my advisor was very impressed with her, and he invited Saras to attend some of our doctoral seminars at Darden. And she had, at that time, after finishing at Carnegie Mellon, she had got a faculty position at the University of Washington in Seattle. So she said to me and my classmate, Nicholas Dew, she said, why don't you come over to the University of Washington and we can work on a paper together. So that's when we worked on the book chapter, 3 Views of Entrepreneurial Opportunity, which is a highly cited paper.
I wrote my thesis as well.
Okay, yeah. That I was thinking that I'm sure you've cited that paper because you spoke about opportunities.
Yes.
So, and to travel to places like this, we had very generous travel budgets. And I remember my first AOM conference in Toronto. With my classmates, we went to Toronto, and we were actually accommodated at one of the conference hotels, which is, I think, Hilton or something like that. And I know that there were many, professors, faculty members who had come from other universities, perhaps with more limited budgets, and they had to stay outside Toronto in bed and breakfast accommodations and things like that. And we kept telling ourselves how lucky we were, right? So the Darden PhD program was very unique in this sense. And the second thing was that we had 2 philosophers who were very active in the program. One was Ed Freeman, who's considered to be the father of stakeholder theory. He wrote his famous 1984 book, Strategic Management, a Stakeholder Approach. And the other philosopher is Patricia Verheyen. Patricia Verheyen was the head of the doctoral program. And these 2 philosophers, they believed in treating doctoral students like colleagues. And so there was, in our discussions with them, in our seminars, there was no sense of hierarchy at all. Basically, they encouraged us to confront ideas. They used to say that philosophical discussions are like contact sports, right? Like rugby. You don't hold back from offering strong criticism to the other person's views if you feel that criticism is warranted. So they don't go around with kid gloves, but it was 4 years of very intense debate of ideas, very open exchange of ideas, and they encouraged us to read very widely, and both my supervisor, Professor Venkatraman, and Ed Freeman, their whole approach to research was, if you write something very interesting, it'll eventually get published. Okay, so we didn't spend a lot of time thinking about how to craft articles for specific journals, or how to ensure that these are what I call the tactical issues of publishing, right? How to ensure that your reviewers don't get angry with you, or how do you ensure that you cite the right reviewers depending on which journal you're submitting to. So this is somewhat of a political process, as you know, Anita. But our my supervisor and the members of my committee, they took a completely different approach. They said, you first publish some, come up with ideas that are very, very interesting. and you make your arguments very persuasive. If you're using empirical studies, if you're doing empirical studies, then make sure that your data are very good. And then eventually that paper will get published somewhere, right? So that was the kind of training that we got. And then when I was finishing my PhD, I finished in 2003, but as you know, you go to the job market a year earlier. So I went to the job market in the 2002 Denver AOM conference. And that was a very bad year because this was just after 9/11. And the US economy was in very bad shape. Many universities that had announced open positions in entrepreneurship withdrew them. And it was a very tough market. Okay. So I had offers from three institutions. And one of them was my alma mater in Barcelona, ESN. And since I knew them very well, I knew several of the senior faculty, I decided to take that offer.
Okay.
And so we went back to Spain, and I was there for 4 years from 2003 to 2007 as an assistant professor. And then this opportunity suddenly came up in China to go to the China-Europe International Business School, initially on a 3-year contract. And once again, my wife was fully supportive. She said, it sounds so exciting to go to Shanghai. Around that same time, I had another offer from a US university. And she said, let's go to Shanghai. Sounds so exciting.
Okay.
And I also wanted to go to Shanghai. So we ended up going to Shanghai.
Okay.
And I initially took a 3-year leave of absence from ESA. But then my family and I, we settled down so nicely in Shanghai that we decided to extend our stay there. And finally ended up being in Shanghai for nearly 14 years.
Okay. Because we have had a very emotional journey of, I heard about your journey. We really want to have a light conversation. So can we have a rapid fire here?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's just a very simple rapid fire. So first question is, if you have to choose only 3 adjectives to define yourself, what would you choose?
I would like to think that I'm balanced, predictable, and dependable. I don't know if others would agree with those, but those are my aspirations.
Okay. And if you have to give an advice to your 20-year-old self, what would that be?
I would say continue to be as ambitious as you were when you were 20, but mix that ambition with caution.
Okay.
And I think one of the mistakes I made was I naively believed that even in senior management, what really matters is your technical ability, whereas what really matters in senior management is more your political ability, right? Your ability to persuade, your ability to build consensus, your ability to get things done. And I was not ready with those skill sets when that senior management opportunity came my way.
So my next question to you is, if you have received any advice from your teacher or your senior, and you still follow any advice which you still carry yourself, you carry with yourself?
There's one actually, which I learned from an interviewee of mine.
Okay.
And the advice basically is that whatever activity you do, make yourself aware of the global standards of excellence in that activity.
So I thank you so much, sir, for your time, and your journey is really inspirational. And I know a lot of people these days are struggling hard to decide when to take up a PhD and when to enter in the research into the research program. So your journey is very. I'm sure it is going to help a lot of people to decide that research is a very promising and fulfilling career option. So thank you so much for this interaction. Thank you, sir.
It's great to see you all here. Thank you for watching our work. If you have not subscribed to Inkpothub Media, then please hit the bell icon and subscribe to our channel and support research celebrations in India.